I decided to delete my Instagram because I just felt like I was so addicted to this kind of false version of my life that it was just taking over. I would be on set working, I'd come and sit in my chair and just scroll.
A lot of studies show that how we were loved or unloved between the ages of 0 to 5 impact the next 15, 25, 50 years of our life.
Wow.
And how we give love to ourselves and how we give love to others. And so I was thinking, do you have a core memory or an experience with your family from childhood that kind of embodies the feeling you have about them now, or that keeps you tied close to them?
I'd say sort of more than a memory is just a feeling that I could say all of my brothers and I had, was that because our dad's a comedian, his job only ever existed once we had gone to bed. And our mum worked from home. She was a photographer. So to us as kids, our parents didn't really work. They just were always home. So we had this amazing foundation where no matter any time of the day, either mum or dad would be at the house. And we felt so kind of solid as a family, which is why I kind of have this dream of one day having kids and putting my work to bed and just kind of being there as a dad. Because I really admire how my dad was around. You know, being a comedian is a very, very volatile job. The highs and lows are so extreme, and as kids we never saw that. The only version of my dad I ever saw was the happy dad, let's go to the park. We used to play this game called golf goals, where we would go down to the park, there's like this big blue metal goal, and we would just fire golf balls into that goal every day, and he would give us 10p every time a ball went in the goal, and that was kind of the foundation of our golf and all that sort of stuff. So for me, broader than a core memory was the idea of always feeling connected and safe within my family unit. And I think a large portion of that is that my mum and dad have always been such a solid team, and they've always been there for us.
Yeah, wow. Have they, as you've grown older, have they kind of opened up about some of the challenges that they were going through that they obviously didn't show you and your family when you were kids? Because I can imagine, we always talk about this, right? Like being a comedian is extremely difficult because you're making everyone else laugh. At the same time, it's a career path that, like you said, is completely volatile.
Sure.
Have they opened up as time's gone on? And how has that felt when you've gone from like seeing your parents always being happy to being like, oh wait, there was all this other stuff going on?
Absolutely they have. And it's not even sometimes things that they've told us. It's just things that we've grown up to recognize. As a young kid, you know, you're not looking to how's my mum feeling, how's my dad feeling. And now as an older person, you know, those are things I care about. I want to call my mum because I know it will brighten her day. So that's all part of growing up, I guess. So seeing the way in which my dad's job affects him or my dad's job affects my mum is something we've all sort of come to terms with, and he's amazing at it. I mean, to be honest, I say affect, it doesn't really affect anyone. He's so good at handling it, which is a lot of why I feel like I am the way I am. For example, The Crowded Room's come out. The critics absolutely hated it. They thought it was the worst thing they've ever seen. And it doesn't really upset me. And I think a large part of my feeling towards that has come from my dad being able to do a gig, the gig not going well, him brushing it off his shoulder and just right onto the next one.
Yeah, I think for so many of us, you know, getting bad reviews, perceptions, people talking about us, whatever that may be, whatever scale we live at, can actually affect us.
Sure.
And you saying that actually seeing your dad, seeing him shrug it off and seeing him move on actually really helped him. Do you think that you've been able to create a bit more of a skill around that now, or is it something that happens naturally for you? Because I'm guessing that there's a lot of people who are listening and watching going, Tom, that's pretty amazing that you can do that at your scale and your level. But, you know, I'm still affected by that. Or I really struggle when my mate says something. Like, I know
Sure.
The number one thing I hear is like, most people don't chase their dreams because they're scared of what their mates will say, let alone what the world will say.
What the world will say.
Yeah, like I had this I was flying back last night, as I was telling you. So I was on a plane from DC to London last night. And the air hostess, she was wonderful. Her name was Jeanette. She said to me, she was like, Jay, I really want to start a YouTube channel, but you know, you just got to block out what your friends are going to say, right? And she was just worried about it. So that it's a very real thing. So I guess, have you kind of figured out a little formula for it? Or is it just natural because you saw your dad and it's become easier that way?
I think it's a little bit of both, really. You know, I think it's something you definitely get better at. I'm really lucky that I have an incredibly strong group of friends. Like, one of my best mates just called me up earlier to say he'd seen the 5th episode, and He's like, I know what happens in the show and I'm still loving it. The people I'm watching it with have no idea what's going on, but they can't wait for the next one.
Yeah.
So, you know, I really, really hold high the opinions of people that I really care about. I'm also really lucky to have an amazing group of fans who are so supportive. They are diehard. They are there day one. And that makes me feel really good. But I do think a lot of my lessons in life have come from my dad and the ways that he can deal with things that he hasn't done very well in the past, that he's passed on to me. And I live by this really, I don't actually know if Christian Bale did say this, but
I love Christian Bale.
I love Christian Bale. I absolutely love Christian Bale.
We'll say he said it, yeah.
But I think the quote is, if you have a problem with me, text me. And if you don't have my number, you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me.
That is so good.
And I think that is such a great piece of advice, because as a celebrity, you live on this stage, you live out there, you kind of give out a version of yourself that you want people to see.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be the version of yourself that they can have a problem with or they can love. And there is I feel like I'm quite authentic in my public persona, but I just try to really care about what my family thinks, what my friends think, what the people in my local community think. I live in Kingston. I know everyone that lives there. I can't walk 5 feet without bumping into one of my mum's friends. So it's something I've been working on. I try my best to not let that stuff affect me. It does.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not cold-hearted or anything like that. It does affect me, but I just try to move on and focus on the positives.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And was there ever a piece of feedback or a rumor or something you saw that did affect you, where you actually thought, well, or at least made you stop and go, God, I'm trying to see the positives, but this one's tough. Like this actually made me have to pause and figure it out.
Something that did really upset me, I was in New York, I was shooting the crowded room, and I was having a really hard time with the job just because of how taxing it was, the emotional capacity that I was having to get to every day. And I decided to delete my Instagram because I just felt like I was so addicted to this kind of false version of my life that it was just taking over. I would be on set working, I'd come and sit in my chair and just scroll. And it was becoming a problem. I was just obsessed with it, and I was obsessed to find out what people were saying and what they thought about me. So I decided to make an announcement, which unfortunately we have to do, and say that I'm taking a break from social media. And I try to position myself and say, like, I'm taking a break from social media because I feel like my mental health will benefit from it. And the thing that really upset me is the press ran with that, and they tried to make out that I was having this mental breakdown. And what upset me was, if I was having a mental breakdown, that's not for you to report on. They took the story in the wrong direction, and they painted again this negative light on mental health, rather than saying, oh, he's doing it. It's okay that he's doing it, so we should all feel okay to do it too. They were saying, oh, look, he's not the perfect happy-go-lucky kid you think he is. He's having a nervous breakdown in New York. And I think that was a really unfair line of journalism, let's say, because I just think it again kind of painted people looking for help in the wrong light, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. It almost sounds like you were actually preemptively going, I'm doing this so that I don't go in that direction.
Totally.
So, at least I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it's
absolutely.
It's almost like I'm proactively seeing that I could end up in a position where I might have a breakdown. I don't want to be in that position. And so I'm responsibly saying, guys, I'm taking a break in order to protect myself.
100%.
Yeah. You were diagnosed, as far as I read, with dyslexia at age 7.
Yes.
And I was wondering how, a lot of our community and our audience is diagnosed as well, or some of them are not, but they're finding out later on in life. How did that affect you, or how were you set up for success with that because as an actor, you've got to learn lines, you've got to read lines. There's a lot of activities that people would assume are quite challenging.
Sure.
But you found a way, and walk us through that a little bit.
I don't know. My mum has always been really hands-on with our education.
Mm-hmm.
She, really wanted us to just do our best. Our dad always said, like, look, I don't care what grades you get. As long as you try your best, and that's all that we can ask for.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my dyslexia, it's really just my spelling. I mean, honestly.
It's just that, yeah.
Ask for.
Yeah. And acting you started early too, age 9, right? Like that was something that you started pursuing really early on in life. And I feel, was that something that you were always sure about? There's that famous viral TikTok that always goes around of you, I don't know how old you were, being asked, you know, what superhero would you play
Oh, right.
when you're
Yeah, yeah,
older? And you
yeah.
say, oh, maybe Spiderman,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, and I wonder like how much of your acting career do you feel like you've manifested, or there was a vision or a focus, or is it more just like this was naturally what you were into and
Sure.
it grew? Where did that come from?
I do believe in manifesting, actually. I really do. I think what's interesting about my career is this was never something I wanted. I just was a young kid. I loved dancing. My mum would take me to a dance class every Saturday, and I got spotted through that dance class to audition for a show on the West End. I ended up doing the show.
Billy
I loved
Elliot.
it. Billy Elliot. It was the time
Love
of my
that show.
life. It was such a cool experience. Just by complete fluke, an agent came to see the show the night that I was on. She signed me. She sent me to an audition for a film. I was lucky enough to get the part. All of a sudden, I was on set with Ewan McGregor and Naomi Watts, and we made The Impossible. And to be perfectly honest with you, it was just a hobby. It was something that my mum would let me do on the summer holidays. She was very keen that I kept my schooling up. And there sort of came that time in England where you're in between GCSEs and A-levels, and you're trying to figure out. When I was going through that, you could still drop out at A-levels. Obviously, now you have to do A-levels. And I had that moment where I was like, what do I want to do? I could try and stay at school and figure out what I want to do, or this thing that's been a hobby, but my sort of summer holiday activity, which is acting, I could try and do that for a living. And I've been so lucky that I've been, offered jobs and all that sort of stuff. I decided to go with it. I joined the Brit school because, my mum was keen that I didn't go for school for an education, but went to school to expand my social skills and meet kids my own age. All my friends when I was 15 were like 30-year-old people because they're all adults from the business. So I think my mum was keen that I had some friends that are my age who are now my best friends today. So I never really wanted this. I just sort of never stopped doing it. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the creativity. I love the building blocks that are required to put a film together. I love the collaboration on set between people from all different walks of life. A film set is a melting pot of all sorts of different people, maybe.
One of the things that you mentioned recently was that you gave up drinking about a year and a half ago.
Yes.
And you said it was the hardest thing you ever did.
Yes.
And I wanted to know what was so hard about it for you. Why was it so hard?
It's interesting. I didn't one day wake up and say, I'm giving up drinking. I just, like many Brits, had a very, very boozy December. Christmas time, I was on vacation, I was drinking a lot. And I've always been able to drink a lot. I think I get my genes from my mum's side in that thing. Like I can drink. And I decided to just give up for January. I just wanted to do dry January. And all I could think about was having a drink. It's all I could think about. I was waking up thinking about it. I was checking the clock. When's it 12? And it just really scared me. I just was like, wow, maybe I have a little bit of an alcohol thing. So I sort of decided to punish myself and say, I'll do February as well. I'll do 2 months off. If I can do 2 months off, then I can prove to myself that I don't have a problem. 2 months go by and I was still really struggling. I felt like I couldn't be social. I felt like I couldn't go to the pub and have a lime soda. I couldn't go out for dinner. I was really, really struggling. And I started to really worry that maybe I had an alcohol problem. So I decided that I would wait until my birthday, which is June 1st. I said to myself, if I can do 6 months without alcohol, then I can prove to myself that I don't have a problem. And by the time I had got to June 1st, I was the happiest I've ever been in my life. I could sleep better. I could handle problems better. Things that would go wrong on set that would normally set me off, I could take in my stride. I had such better mental clarity. I felt healthier. I felt fitter. And I just sort of said to myself, like, why am I enslaved to this drink? Why am I so obsessed by the idea of having this drink? And I would look back and recognize that I would go to events for work and be like, I can't enjoy myself until I've had a few beers. And I just felt so much pressure. And this is one of the things why I've sort of distanced myself from the rugby community, because so much of it is about how much can you drink? Let's get you as drunk as possible. And it's honestly been the best thing I've ever done. I'm a year and a half into it now. It doesn't even cross my mind. I've found amazing replacements that I think are fantastic. Ones that are also really healthy. I found this one beer that it's full of electrolytes and it's you know, the carbohydrates in it are long-lasting energy. So like having a beer is now actually like a really healthy thing. I'm really lucky that all my friends are super supportive about it. I've never run into that scenario where my friends are like, oh, go on, just have a beer. Like, you're fine. They've always sort of really supported me. And I don't want to be that person that's saying to people, you should get sober, you should get sober. If I could encourage someone to drink less, then that's great. But I don't want to start getting into the world of you need to stop drinking, because it's not for me to say. I went on my own little journey. I'm really enjoying it. I'm delighted that my mum's has also given up. She's loving it. And it's been amazing. I can't believe the difference that I feel from not drinking. Yeah. I feel amazing.
That's amazing, man. I love hearing that. And I love hearing that it's been great for you, right? I think that's the point. Not everything has to be like, look what I did, you can do it too. It's kind of like, no, this is just what's been great for me. Do you think it was partly that attitude for you, at least in the beginning, where it's like, well, look, I can drink. I drink a lot. It comes from my mum genes and it doesn't affect me. And then all of a sudden you realize, well, wait a minute, it's more than that. Did you find that there's a really fine line between like, oh, I know I can drink a lot, and then all of a sudden you're kind of not addicted beyond that?
No, addicted, mate. Like, I'm happy to say, like, I was definitely addicted to alcohol. Not shying away from that at all. I think anyone that anyone that has a beer every day is probably got a little bit of a problem. But yeah, you're right. I would drink and drink and drink and drink, and then you would just reach that moment where you're like, wow, I shouldn't have had that last beer. And you wake up the next day and you have a terrible headache and you're suffering. I bought one of those rings that will tell you about your sleep.
Yeah, Aura ring.
Yeah, and it was amazing because I couldn't sleep. I was like, why can't I sleep? I'm working 14 hours a day. I'm doing 2 hours in the gym. I'm eating really healthily and I can't sleep. What's wrong with me? I bought this ring and it was booze. It was completely affecting my sleep. And since I've given it up, I can sleep anywhere, you know? It's also interesting as well, going on nights out and having a great time as the sober person, and then getting to that point in the night where people start, you know, spitting in your ear and everyone's like, I love you, man. I love you so much. And you're like, yeah, brilliant. I love you too. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm going to bed. Like, I love being that person now. I love seeing my friends on the golf course at 8 a.m. in the morning, feeling fresh and ready to go. And they're sort of crawling out their car. And so I'm over the moon to be sober. I love it.
Yeah. For anyone who is listening right now and is going, Tom, I love that for you. I want to do it too. Like, they're listening going, I'm having too much every day. I can notice some of those things, but I'm just stuck. And it's hard because we know that addiction's that way. We know that this is heavy. It's not easy. But if someone is watching going, Tom, tell me, like, what did you do to even get started? How did you have that courage to say, I'm going to do January, I'm going to stick at it? Were there any moments where you actually fell back and then had to get back on the horse again? Like, just walk us through that a little bit more for anyone who is watching going, Tom, mate, I want to be in your position in like 6 months.
I didn't fall back on it. I have done in the past. Like, I've had periods of my life where I'd given up drinking and then gone back to drinking. But this time, I don't know, it was just different. I really worked to sort of change my mindset. I really asked myself, like, why do you drink? Why are you drinking? And a lot of the time my answer would be to feel more comfortable in the social environment.
Yeah.
And I just put myself in those environments and just would force myself to be there. I'd force myself to hang out and go to a club or go to a bar, go to a dinner.
Yeah,
and
so you weren't avoiding those places.
I was at the beginning because I didn't feel like I could go and not have a drink because of the stress of it. But then after a while, I sort of was like, mate, you've got to pull your socks up here and you can't just live in your house all the time. You've got to go out and enjoy yourself. And if you're only enjoying yourself because you're drinking, then you really do have a problem. But I just changed my mindset. I found really good replacements, things that I could sort of attribute to having a beer. I often found with me, most of it is just the ritual of cracking something open and sharing it with friends and drinking it. Whether it's sparkling water or a beer, I don't associate, like, I don't see a difference.
Yeah.
And I just really set my mind to it. I was like, I really want to do this. I want to prove to myself I can do it.
Yeah.
And then once I'd felt the health benefits and started really feeling like my full self, I was like, oh my God, this is the best. But do you not drink?
I haven't drank for 17 years.
No way.
Yeah,
congratulations. That's amazing.
I feel amazing. Yeah, it's incredible. And what was really interesting for me is not relying on drinking made me rely on qualities and skills I had that were actually better.
Yeah.
So now that I couldn't drink as an excuse to hang with the lads, I was bringing out parts of my personality that I probably would have just hidden away or ignored. Yeah, suppressed. And all of a sudden you were actually getting respected and liked for who you were,
Right.
rather than the person who you were when you were drunk.
Sure.
And actually that worked in the workplace, and there was no one at the workplace going, oh, Jay doesn't drink, so he's not getting promoted.
Right.
It wasn't like that. People were like, oh yeah, I really like hanging out with Jay, or he's a really good guy, or whatever it may be. And I was still getting the same opportunities, and I was still getting promoted at work and whatever it was. And I think that's what I'd like to remind people, that don't feel like your career or your work is going to suffer. Even for you, like I'm sure as a, with your career path, you have to be at parties, you have to be at events.
Of course.
And the fact that you're able to do that now without having alcohol, and it doesn't sound like it's negatively impacting your career. If anything, it's the opposite.
Mate, I honestly cannot believe like the amount of times I've sat down with an actor that I've really admired, or sat down with a producer or a director and been like, oh, well, I don't drink anymore. And they go, oh, I don't drink, 10 years. And you're like, oh my God. And I've had so many insightful conversations with people like yourself where you've heard their story, their reason for giving up. And there is a wonderful community of people. And I love it. I love being a part of that community. I'm really proud to be a part of it. I hope that, I can meet other people and chat to them about it, because it's really nice. It's lovely to be like, let's go get a lime soda together,
Yeah, let's get a juice. Let's get a smoothie. Yeah, no, it is true. It's true. And it's really interesting because I can't remember. I'm trying to remember. There was this blog that came out years ago. I can't even remember it now. And there was this girl on Instagram who was getting a lot of likes and a lot of comments and a lot of attention. And one day she just disappeared. Like, she stopped posting, and everyone's just like, all the comments were like, where are you? What happened? Are you okay? Like, what happened to you? Everyone was frantic trying to figure out what happened to her, because they loved her, they were following her and all the rest of it. And what they didn't know is that it was built by a team that was trying to show that what people didn't notice is that in every picture she posted, she was drinking. And it was it was almost like original AI that was made up to prove the point that you can love someone and you can think you're really close to them, and you can think their lifestyle looks amazing, but actually they've got a drink in every picture they post, and you didn't realize they had an alcohol problem. So there was no real person who died. But the point was that your friends could be struggling even when they're posting these beautiful lifestyle pictures. But are you aware?
Wow.
And are you conscious of how much it affects you? No, I think the benefits that you just pointed out of good sleep, good health, great mental clarity,
Totally.
they're huge. But there's a couple of things I want to point out for everyone who's listening, just as takeaways, because Tom makes it so seamless when you're talking about it. It's really beautiful as well. But one of the things you mentioned was finding alternatives. And during my monk life, we always talked about how there was something that we called the higher taste. And it was saying you can never give up a lower taste unless you had a higher taste.
Sure.
And so there has to be a switch. There has to be a replacement.
Has to be a replacement,
And so the fact
100%.
that you found alternatives, I think that's half the battle.
Sure.
Because most of us are trying to take something out of our lives, and then you're just trying to fill it.
Yeah.
And then you have to go back to what you had before because you're not finding a replacement. So that was beautiful. And the second thing you said, which I loved, which was having this conversation and dialogue with other people, someone who's 1 year ahead of you, someone who's 10 years ahead, someone who's 20 years ahead, who's gone through that process, and they're open and honest and vulnerable about, well, you know what, I did have a weak moment, or you know what, this was really tough for me. And I think having those communities where you can talk about these things makes a massive difference. So if anyone's struggling, I hope that those two things can kind of, give you the support you need.
And again, it goes back to the message of the show, is that like you should ask for help.
Yeah.
And you should feel empowered to do so.